I first heard about this movie a while back when I was doing some reading on The Most Dangerous Game and was intrigued. A version of the story where the hunted was naked? How could that not be cool? And from the description and what little I read about it, I expected it to just be hot garbage, but it was actually better than hot garbage, so color me surprised. But then I learned it was directed by the same guy who made Night of the Comet, and I thought, well, this really should have been better than just, better than hot garbage. It should have been actually okay, but it's not actually okay. This is a deeply flawed movie on the story level, and that's what I want to talk about today, how this movie fails to be a good screenplay. This might be interesting to those of you that are into writing, or maybe you're a YouTube film critic who could use another way to assess bad movies. Welcome to Exploitation Reviews, and me, Rob, and today I'm taking a look at how Naked Fear fails to be a good story. But before we get to that, we'll need to see what the story is, so let's get started. We open on a woman in a field, and she ain't got no clothes on. She screams out, "Why are you doing this?" And then some guy shoots her. Twice. Okay, that's pretty brutal for a cold open. Hitting the ground running. No complaints so far. Then we hop over to some hunters talking to the sheriff and the new deputy. After breakfast, we hop over to our main character, Diana, being picked up. She's about to start work at a club. The cops from the beginning pull them over and are not very professional. The sheriff doesn't seem to care much for the driver of the car, it seems. Diana isn't too impressed with the club and calls her parents, telling them she'd like to come home. But they aren't very helpful. And the guy that picked her up says, if you don't want to work here, fine, just give me the money for the flight over and the room and we're good. But she doesn't have money for the flight or the room, so she's not good. She's stuck, and the guy even holds her driving license as a security measure. We learn that the town has quite a number of missing persons, and some of these missing persons were dancers just like Diana. A few weeks in, Diana is making pretty good money on tips by showing more skin than she's legally allowed to show, and then it looks like she's about to make even more money by turning a trick, but at the last moment she backs out. The John, however, isn't about to take no for an answer. He puts her inside some sort of room somewhere, does something with some pliers, and then he drugs her. Diana wakes up sometime later out in the wilderness without any clothes on. She does eventually run across that hunter, and he tells her that she now has 15 minutes as a head start. After that, the hunt begins. And for obvious, very jiggly reasons, I can't show you hardly any of this part of the movie, which is a good portion of the movie. She will run and hide and try to avoid the hunter. After she calms down a bit, she'll make smarter decisions, hiding her tracks, using the environment to fight back, and so on. Eventually, she'll run across some people who help out in various ways, and she'll escape. There's a bit more to the ending that I won't spoil, but that's the movie. And as a movie, as a story, it fails. But it does fail in a way that can be instructive for writers, so let's take a look at how. Sometimes when we write stories, we don't really know what the story is until we finish it. We might start with one idea, but as the story progresses, we realize it's really something else. Sometimes the characters take us in a different direction we didn't plan for, or some subtext we didn't realize was there makes itself apparent to us, and so on. I know it's weird to talk about writing a story and being the writer and not having complete control over how that story goes, but it is nonetheless true, and all the writers out there know exactly what I'm talking about. It's weird, but it happens. And when this happens, when we finish a story that's gone into an unexpected direction, what we need to do is go back to the beginning, now knowing what the story really is, and cut out all that stuff that doesn't further the story. And sometimes we'll have to cut out stuff we like. Cool characters, good bits of dialogue, nice descriptions, and so on. But it's gotta be done. Kill your darlings. Every writer out there has heard that bit of advice. If you leave in the stuff that doesn't further the story, the audience will know something is wrong. They might not know exactly what it is, but they will know. They always know. And the writer of this movie did not kill her darlings, and the movie suffers greatly because of it. So, I mean, what is the story here? Well, a woman is trafficked. She's then kidnapped by a serial killer who targets trafficked women. He dumps her naked in the forest and starts hunting her. She manages to escape, partly by being clever, partly by finding help, partly by being lucky. That's the story. What's important to notice here is that the police in this movie have nothing to do with that story. Nothing. They don't find her, they don't rescue her, their actions have zero bearing on the plot. Zero. And therefore, they should not be in this movie. Perhaps when the writer started the script, she imagined a kind of police procedural of some kind, but that's not what the story ended up being, so it should have been changed. And the same thing is true for Diana's roommate, who takes an interest in figuring out what happened to her. Her actions after Diana goes missing have zero effect on the plot, so those scenes should not be in the movie. And when you watch this movie, you might get the impression that it's poorly paced, or that it just feels off somehow, or somehow amateurish. And this is probably why. It's because it's full of scenes that simply do not matter. And, on the other hand, there are some interesting ideas here which aren't fully developed. The trafficking story is interesting. Digging deeper into how women can be targeted and trapped into sex work, that could have been really cool, but the movie doesn't do that because it's spending way too much time with characters who do not matter. And both of these mistakes, wasting time on characters that don't affect the plot and not digging deep enough into that plot, have the same solution. The writer should have known what the story was and developed that story. And as it is, the movie really does run too long. It's around an hour and 45 minutes. But if the filmmakers had cut out all of those police scenes and all of the scenes of that roommate looking for Diana, they could have got the movie down to under an hour and then added 20 or 30 minutes digging deeper into Diana's character and her terrible situation. That would have been a good movie, maybe even a great movie, but that's not what happened, which is really too bad because Danielle De Luca, she did a wonderful job as Diana. I mean, she's by far the best part about this movie. But that's not the movie we have, which is really unfortunate. The movie we have is really only useful as a lesson in what not to do. Well, that and, for some really nice jiggly running.